This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview. Well, hello and welcome back to the Research Talks here from Stock Box with Alan Green and Dan Flynn. So, how's it been, guys, this week? Alan, let's start with you. What have you been seeing? Anything standing out to you?
Well, it's been, Dan and I were chatting before we came on, and it's been a pretty quiet week. Tuesday actually was the busiest week, but of course, I think there's a bit of feel good back in the UK economy now. Of course, we've seen that 0.25% drop in interest rates, which I don't think was expected yesterday, but that's obviously good news. And Keir Starmer and his band of merry people. I'm going to say people, haven't I? Have secured two massive trade deals, one with India and one with the USA. And Donald Trump said it's a great thing, it's a great deal, really good deal for everyone. So that's really good. But yeah, there's a bit of a feel good factor, and I think, and I've not looked at the price of gold, but the markets seem to have delivered a muted reaction, I think. But I think we're seeing stability now. We're almost back to where we were pre-tariff.
Yeah, well, gold is 3,388 as of this morning, so It did again approach all-time highs, and it's just pulled back a tiny bit. But Bitcoin is up over 100,000. That again, that's a very good risk-on. I always think it's a good risk-on, risk-off indicator. So the fact that that's gone bullish again and actually gold has pulled back, it suggests that it's risk-on, more appetite now, which is obviously nice. That's what we want to sort of see.
Yeah, there is that sense. I think I think that's it. There is a more of a risk-off approach now. So yeah.
Indeed, I think it's an opportunity to buy because you've got companies like Ondo and SureTech, for example, pulling back a fair bit there, and also SVML pulled. Sovereign, of course, we know that company quite well. That pulled back a fair bit.
Yes, it has.
No reason at all for that apart from the general macro environment. So, a chance to get a few stocks at a little bit of a discount, I think.
Yeah.
At the moment.
Well, the first one I'm going to talk about this morning, Blencowe, but obviously that's after the maiden Mogotes feature, is one such stock very much in that category too.
Indeed. Okay. Well, Dan, I know you want to talk to us about Mogotes. We did cover Mogotes a week or two ago. We had our special feature out. I think it was last week.
Yeah.
It was last week. Yeah.
It was last week. Yeah.
Or was it this week? I can't remember actually. But anyway, it was recent. It was recent, and that got some good feedback actually. But they've had some news since then. So if you just bring us back up to speed on Mogotes, and then we can play a little bit of a clip from my chat with the geologist there, Stephen Nano.
Yes, like you say, we covered them a few weeks back, but I thought it'd be worth revisiting for a few reasons. There's the interview, there's the update, and really, I just think it's a great investment proposition that remains under the radar at the moment. Even after jumping another 10% or so over the last few days, Mogotes still has a market cap of just 43 million Canadian dollars. Obviously, that's not significant, but I still think it underplays the potential here. So before we hear the clip, Mark, perhaps the best place to start is with a quick recap of that investment position. So Mogotes is exploring a massive copper, gold, silver asset straddling the Chilean-Argentinian border called Filo Sur. And I say massive because it recently expanded the size of the project to incorporate an additional 1,300 prospective hectares. So Filo Sur is located in the Vicuna copper district, which has become a hotbed of discovery over the past 10 or so years. And it is immediately adjacent to the most significant of these, which is a project called Filo del Sol. So the large-scale, high-grade sulfide deposit of Filo del Sol is one of the most significant copper discoveries globally in recent decades. And it's also one of the world's largest undeveloped copper-gold-silver deposits. And the project was acquired by BHP and London Mining last year as part of a 4.5 billion Canadian dollar deal to form a JV focused on establishing and developing its full potential. So through early analysis of satellite imagery and historic data, Mogotes discovered that its Filo Sur project represents a clear extension of the trend of Filo del Sol with the correct structural setting present. And its systematic geophysical surveying, sampling, and trenching has given it an excellent understanding of the surface geology, as well as what's happening at depth. So the company has built a bank of targets with the characteristics of large mineral systems, prospective for both porphyry and epithermal copper gold deposits. And this week it added 3 new ones that appear to be among its strongest yet. So shall we hear a bit more from Stephen, Mark?
Yeah, let's play that clip.
For a long time, this segment was thought to be a non-productive area. There weren't any deposits to be discovered, but certainly, Billow Corp and NGEx have absolutely proved that to be wrong. There's now 4 substantial deposits in that section of the belt. We're hoping to make it 5 in the near term. For BHP and Lundin completed that $4.5 billion transaction. It's located about 1 kilometre north of our property boundary. That's the most southerly hole that they've drilled on trend. So, that's an impressive sort of 20-kilometre strike length of that arc. And we're really the only junior that can truly claim to be directly on structure. We could see the extension of the alteration systems that host these deposits coming onto that ground. We could simply see the extension of their copper anomalies into our ground. So just very good, basic, systematic, science-driven exploration, and we could just definitively demonstrate it. So these are 2 high-priority drill targets for us now, because they have the right geophysical signatures, which is the magnetics there, which suggests there's an intrusive there that has magnetite in it, and those kind of intrusives can deliver metal. Running a company that's exploring a project right next to a world-class zone, and then to have the number of targets and bona fide, well-constrained, data-driven drill targets that we can see on this project, again, is something that you just don't see many times in a career. The investment case, I think, here is pretty self-evident. Right? Our market cap at the moment is around 35 million Canadian dollars. It's a very solid and decent market cap, and given the challenges in the market, the fact that we're net positive ahead of our listing price is fantastic. But you step across the border there, and $4.5 billion acquisition for BHP and Lundin right on our property boundary, and then NGEx current market cap, $2.4 billion. I think the investment case is pretty clear. The potential for discovery, we've talked about that throughout the program. I genuinely look at these targets and go, yep, we've got real chance for discovery here on a world-class belt.
There we go. So that is from Stephen Nano himself. And I don't think that it was included in that clip, but I did ask him if he'd ever seen anything like this in his career before. And he said it's very unusual to see something like this in the career of a geologist. So he's very sort of buoyant about what they've got there. And I mean, why not? If you go through that whole special feature we did, and and as he said, they're right next door to that huge deposit, and geology doesn't know boundaries. So borders, I should say. I think this could be a really good year for them.
I agree. I think sometimes you look at a stock and you just think, I could see how this one's going to play out. And perhaps you agree, Mark. I think Mogotes is one of those. I mean, you look at it, it owns a project that's highly prospective for porphyry and epithermal copper gold mineralization. Project's an extension of one of the biggest copper gold discoveries globally. Appears to share a number of characteristics geologically. And the owners of that neighbouring project are BHP and Lundin, who have injected billions into the region. And as Stephen touched on in your interview, it's not at all inconceivable that Mogotes could be an obvious partner or takeout opportunity for BHP. I mean, it's already spent $4.5 billion on establishing a project in the region. What's another few hundred million, right? All Mogotes has to do, and I say that knowing it's a lot more complicated than it sounds, is actually demonstrate with physical evidence that economic mineralization is present at Filo Sur. And it has a real opportunity to do that with the drilling it's going to do later this year. Stephen outlined the company is gathering all the data it can, ticking all the necessary boxes to ensure it has as good a chance as possible when the drill bit gets turning. And the 3 new targets it's identified this week are only going to increase its chances there. In its RNS, the company said that the data for these targets conforms with geological models of porphyry and apothermal systems. Data is compelling, and they're fast-tracking the targets as much as possible. So if the company can return some core with some really decent gold and copper intersections that point to the presence of the different deposit styles Stephen mentioned, I'll be really interested to see where this company heads.
No, I'm going to be watching this one with a lot of attention. This well, as we head into the autumn, effectively, when they want to get active on the ground there, and hopefully we can do some stuff from site, because I know they're heading there and they do have Starlink connection. So it's going to be a nice one to watch as they plan that drilling program and then indeed get action. So yeah, nice one to keep an eye on. Thank you, Dan. So Alan, then Blencowe Resources. So we've spoken about them a little bit before. And just before we started talking, of course, you mentioned as well they'd pulled back. Well, actually, you said at the start, didn't you, that they'd pulled back a fair bit as well. So where are we at with Blencowe?
Well, I think with any mining project of this scale, it's all about reducing risk, isn't it? It's about that phased process of risk reduction as the numbers come in and the project proves itself up. And Blencowe have steadily progressed with that, regardless of where the share price is. The share price is where it is because the market has been so lousy, and the company, as you well know, has just raised £1,100,000 to complete the DFS process, and that was done at 3p, and we're just sitting below that now. But the company's previously raised money at 5p. So just to sort of reiterate the background of the asset, it's the Oram Cross asset in Uganda. It's a tier 1 world-class graphite project. It covers a vast area, and there's an estimated 2 to 3 billion tons of graphite in the Oram Cross region, and it's very close to the surface. In some cases, you can literally drive a tractor and hoe across it and pull the stuff out of the ground. The company's got a 21-year mining license, and there is an initial JORC resource estimate of 24.5 million tons at 6%, but that JORC estimate is on just 2% of the total license area. It's absolutely vast. So what the company are currently doing, they're progressing a drilling campaign to increase that JORC resource estimate. There's also more background. There's very strong government and ministerial support for the project. The government ministers have visited and also been supportive of testing of the product that has actually gone to various Chinese institutions to be tested, and it has been sufficient quality to attract the interest of the U.S. Development Finance Corporation, who have provided a $5 million non-dilutive grant, which has been issued in tranches over the past few years to develop and fast track the project. So their involvement is huge as well. And remember, I said at the start, it's all about reducing the risk as you go forward. So the DFS is currently underway. September last year, the company also announced a joint venture with a company called Triessence. And Triessence are a leading spherical graphite and anode material producer. And they have agreed a joint venture to establish a graphite beneficiation facility in Uganda, which will upgrade 96% graphite to battery-ready 99.9% graphite, or uncoated spherical graphite, should I say. So the further steps that have been taken, Oram Cross has received full accreditation from the Mineral Services Partnership Forum, and as we've sort of moved into this year, we've seen several takeoff agreements. The first one with Apollo Energy in Florida. The second one was announced last month, an offtake agreement with Tidar in China for an initial 5,000 tons of graphite. per annum. But the company announced in January the commencement of a near 7,000 meter drilling campaign to complete the DFS and also to substantially expand the inferred and indicated and measured resource at Orme Cross. It's drilling a number of new high-grade targets, and to date, the company has also identified, as well as the Camp Lode and Northern Syncline deposits, it's identified a new deposit, which is the first major step-out target to be tested beyond the original two lodes. And the company is confident that drilling success at Beehive will further validate estimates from independent geologists of 2 to 3 billion tons of graphite for the Orme Cross deposit, which will make it one of the largest graphite deposits worldwide. And because it's at shallow depths, that means low cost mining, low extraction costs, and all the rest of it. So step-by-step reduction of risk for investors. We've also seen, as I said, the fundraise that is now complete. So the company is funded through to DFS. So I expect to see further progress from the company in the coming months as that drilling program is completed. And then obviously following that, we'll have the completion of the DFS, the increase in the JORC estimate for the asset, for the graphite that's at the asset. And then of course, we then move on to the next phase, which will be commencement of construction of the mine and beneficiation plant, and also the beneficiation plant, the 50-50 joint venture with Triessence.
So, in all, in your opinion, now, then, I mean, it has. Is the share price sort of not quite halved, has it? Sort of since the start of the year, but it's getting that way. Do you think that's driven by what you think is driven that by? Just the Trump tariffs? Do you think that's a fallout from that?
I think the Trump tariffs have had an impact, but I think with any project of this scale and duration, it's the perhaps investors become weary and apathetic towards the investment proposition, and you'll see investors pulling out and selling up. Where if they stayed until the construction started, then of course you'd start to see things build up again. But it's just symptomatic of where we are on the markets at the moment. But I think the company's currently got a market capitalization of 9.2 million, and considering the steps it's gone through, the scale of the asset. I mean, we mentioned Sovereign Metals earlier. They're in a similar situation, but Sovereign have the Cassia asset, of course, which is a graphite and rutile asset. But Orme Cross, in terms of scale, is also pretty big too. So there is a massive disparity in terms of valuation there, and I do believe that's going to be addressed in the not too distant future.
Okay, good. Dan, do you have any thoughts on Blencowe before we talk about GreenRoc?
Yeah, definitely. So, Alan, you're saying they've only drilled out 2% of the resource, and it's already one of the biggest graphite projects globally. Wow.
Yeah,
So
it is vast. It's something like 2,000 square kilometers. It's a huge area, and obviously when you go to any asset of that scale, it's a question. Well, where do we start? So they established the high grade zones at Camp Lode and Northern Syncline, but now they're drilling at this third asset, which is the Beehive prospect, and that they expect to. They're already seeing some positive results from there. There was an announcement from the company earlier this week in that regard. So the progress is there, and I think once the drilling campaign's wrapped up and we get those results back, then certainly an investment case is very strong. And you often wonder what it will take, because I mean another example of support in March this year, the African Finance Corporation stated it was willing to fund Orme Cross all the way through. Now, the African Finance Corporation are a tier 1 African investment bank, so they're fully supportive of the asset too. So they've ticked all the boxes that I think any company that's gone through this process should reasonably expect a better performance on the market for the stock. And I'd venture so far as to say that maybe if this was sort of 5-10 years ago, we'd be seeing a company that's valued at 4 or 5 times its current valuation. But that's just where we are.
Yeah, I mean, the long-term case there, with all that scale that they could go on to develop after they've done that initial bit that you were talking about, is enormous, isn't it? So you'd expect some sort of correction at some point.
Yeah, that's it. We'll once they build the plant and they've got the processing facility there, then all they've got to do is go out across that prospect area. Remember, they've got a 21-year license there, and they just go out across the prospect area and identify further prospects. And it's there across the entire 2,000 square kilometres.
Brilliant.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Alan. So, Dan, we talked about GreenRoc before, but it's good to catch up on them. So, what's the latest? What's been going on?
Yeah, so not a million miles away from Blencowe, to be honest. GreenRoc was a company I covered on here back in November, I think, when it was trading under 1.5p. Today it's around 2.7 pence. And I think if things go the company's way, it could rise a lot further from here in a fairly short amount of time, though that's obviously not guaranteed. So the underlying investment opportunity here lies in GreenRoc's flagship Amitsoq project. Amitsoq is based in Greenland and contains one of the highest grade graphite deposits globally. It's a 23 million ton resource, grading an average of 20.4%, which is far above the average for graphite projects of 8%. So GreenRoc's completed a PEA for Amitsoq, which produced an after-tax NPV of $179 million US over a 22-year life of mine. So that's strong. But what really is interesting is GreenRoc will process its graphite as well as produce it. So without getting too technical, and I think Alan touched on this as well with Blencowe, but EV manufacturers can't use raw, unprocessed graphite in the anodes in their car batteries. So they need it to be processed into spherical graphite before they can use it. And they're willing to pay a lot more for this processed product rather than its raw alternative. So rather than selling the graphite produced at Amitsoq off to someone else to process, GreenRoc is looking to process it into spherical graphite itself at a plant it plans to construct in Norway. And this could be where the company really starts to generate a lot of profit if everything goes to plan. So GreenRoc's feasibility study for its proposed plant produced an NPV of $621 million. So all these figures are obviously contingent on the mines and the plant reaching production and going live. But when you consider GreenRoc's market cap at the present is just $6.9 million, you can see there's a huge disconnect between its valuation and the value of its assets. So that in itself is not unexpected. There's always a disconnect between project value and market cap for companies at this stage. And it comes down to the risk, time, and costs associated with bringing their projects into realization, into production, or taking them live. So, a junior can have the biggest resource in the world, but if it can't get the permits or funding to develop it, it doesn't mean much. But this is where it really gets interesting for GreenRoc right now. Because back in August last year, the company applied for both Amitsoq and its processing plant in Norway to be designated strategic project status by the EU. And if the projects get this status, it not only gives them priority treatment in the permitting process, potentially accelerating their development, but it also gives GreenRoc potential eligibility for EU funding programs, massively helping with moving them forward and the costs involved. Last year, for example, we saw a company called Tauga Group receive a 70 million euro grant to develop an anode material plant in Sweden. And I'm sure there's many other examples out there. So long story short, getting strategic project status would be an absolute game changer for GreenRoc, I think. It would massively support the company in actually delivering its projects and realizing their economic value. And you'd like to think that would result in the market putting a much, much higher value on them, pushing up GreenRoc's valuation as it does so. So the exciting news is, according to GreenRoc's results at the end of last month, the company expects to find out if it has received strategic project status over the coming weeks. And what's more, it's very confident it will be successful, especially following the strong ESG rating it recently received in an assessment by a company called Digby. I think CEO Stefan Bernstein's recent reply to a question on GreenRoc's website asking what the company's chances of getting strategic project status are sum it up quite nicely. He said the company ticked all the boxes when it went through the strategic project application template last year. And he added, in my opinion, our AMIC-SOC vertically integrated project is the most technically feasible graphite project in Europe today. So I based my expectations on that. So that's pretty bullish, I would say. When you add in the fact that the EU desperately needs graphite with a global supply deficit expected by the end of the decade, along with the vital role graphite plays in the defence sector, where more and more money is being allocated in Europe, it all starts to get quite exciting here. The market certainly seems to be taking notice, with GreenRoc's share price rising from 1.1p to around 2.7p over the past month. But we'll know sure for soon regarding the status. And if the company's successful, I wouldn't be surprised to see it rise much further from its current valuation.
Excellent. Good. So it doesn't all hinge, but there's a big sort of catalyst coming up in a few weeks on that strategic project status.
Yeah, I think that's the thing everyone's waiting for. But I also think even if it's not successful, graphite is not just a European problem. I mean, the fact that the project's in Europe makes the EU the logical partner and authority to look to for support. But the US is going to need more graphite as well. It's another industry that's dominated by China. So I think there's an opportunity. There's other opportunities for funding, but I think in the first instance we should look to that strategic project status.
Yeah. Okay. Good to hear.
That sounds really good. Yeah, I have to say, and it's an interesting point you made about the US there, Dan, because of course the US Development Finance Corporation have provided $5 million worth of non-dilutive funding to Blencowe to develop Oran Cross as well. So that would be an option for them, I guess, if the strategic funding from the EU doesn't come off. But the EU are very that they have, it's a race against time for them to identify critical mineral assets across Europe by 2030. So they should be in pole position.
Yeah, it's a great macro backdrop, I think, in this market.
Good. Well, thank you for that, Dan. So we want to finish off with Dekel Agri-Vision, and we haven't spoken about these for a while. I know I interviewed them it would have been a few years ago now, I suppose. But Alan, bring us up to speed on Dekel. Is it palm oil?
Yeah, it's palm oil and cashew nuts too, which is it's actually every so often you come across one of these companies that isn't your normal company. This is a company that's really it's helping the community in the Ivory Coast to. You have thousands of smallholders across the Ivory Coast producing or growing raw palm and cashew nuts, and of course, what the smallholders do, they'll go to a larger manufacturer and they'll get the palm kernels processed into palm oil, and of course the cashew nuts processed into the market, and that's how they earn their money. But the Ivory Coast is quite an economic powerhouse in that region of Western Africa. It's been under President Ouattara for many years. There is an election coming up in October, so the country is kind of approaching a pivotal point in time. And what is also interesting is Ivory Coast has been all over the BBC recently. I don't know if you remember a fellow by the name of Tijani Tayam. He was the former chief executive at Aviva, Prudential, and also at Credit Suisse as well. And this fella is basically he's not an Ivory Coast an Ivorian by birth, and he's trying to run for president, but at the moment he's been banned from doing so because they're saying he's French and not from the Ivory Coast. But anyway, that's a technicality. But so the area itself is of interest from from a political and macro standpoint, but that could well, if somebody like Tajani gets in, somebody with his background could really inject some pace and verve into business in the country or manufacturing. But back to Dekel. So Dekel has two processing plants. It has it's got a massive crude palm oil extraction plant at Ain Noan, which is 2 hours southeast of the port of Abidjan, which is obviously the coast there is on the to the south of the country, and then to the southwest of the port, northwest of the port and northeast of the port. To the northwest of the port is the Tabusu cashew nut processing plant. And one of the reasons we've not spoken about this company for a couple of years, Mark, is that the company was expecting to bring cashew nut production or the cashew nut plant into production and back at the start of last year, and there were many issues, technical issues and engineering issues that prevented them from doing that. But it's now up and running, and they've progressed the business and the plant quite substantially during Q1. Again, if we look at the share price chart over the past year, we've seen a high of 1.65p and a low of 1p, which is pretty much where we are now. Which I think it's partly due to uncertainty over the elections and also how that's going to impact on the business going forward. But there's a market capitalization of just 5.7 million. So given the assets that the company has, it's a de minimis valuation, to say the least. But the Q1 palm oil and cashew nut production was pretty impressive. So they've exceeded the Q1 numbers for last year by over 45%. That just under 11,000 tons. Extraction rate up 4.7%, sales up 11%, but also the sale price, which seems to fluctuate quite a bit on the world markets, is up 27% to 969 euros per ton. And also palm kernel oil the sales of that have increased by well over 200% too, along with the price, which is now an average of 1,217 euros per ton. So that's pretty important. And of course, no need to go into the what palm oil is used for. It has a multitude of applications. But the cashew nut production has now kicked in, and raw cashew nut production is now up 200% on previously. Cashew production is up 322%, and prices have also rocketed by 85%. And Lincoln Moore, who you interviewed previously, Mark, he's still the chief exec there. He said that the company is on track for its first EBITDA positive year this year. So that's a good sign. That's a really important step forward. The prices are good. Of course, you can look at the macro picture and consider what might affect those prices going forward. But I think I think possibly we were discussing risk on, risk off. The share price probably reflects a risk off approach, given that we've got this upcoming election in October. But that's offset, I think, by a very strong financial performance, very strong pricing for cashew nuts and for palm oil. And now all of the teething issues are out of the way with the cashew nut production plant. I think if the company issues monthly trading updates, so I think it's very important to watch out for the April update to see just how the company have done, and I think that will be indicative of the year ahead. So it could be a good chance, because the company is now trading at multi-year lows, and I think to grab some stock at this point, you might be in for a very pleasant surprise.
Interesting. Okay, so basically things were put on hold for a while. Technicalities. I mean, there's no need to dwell too much on that, but that's all sorted now, is it, Alan?
It is.
Probably.
It is. Yeah. And cashew nut production is now at full capacity. So
okay.
you've got full capacity production. You've got a big surge, a 66% surge in cashing up. An 85% surge in cashing up prices. Palm oil production continues, but prices are up. Prices are ahead there too. So crude palm oil is up 27% on the previous quarter, and palm kernel oil is up 66% on the previous quarter. So very strong pricing. I think you'd need to look at the macros to try and see how that's going to pan out going forwards. But I think it's the backdrop, the macro backdrop in the country is interesting too, with the elections coming up in October. So once those are out of the way, then that'll also provide greater visibility going to next year.
Well, it's good to hear that they're going to be, as you say, EBITDA positive or on track. It was reiterated
on
for
track,
this year,
yeah.
so that's obviously.
I think the thing is keep an eye out for those monthly updates, because that will that'll be the telling thing, and it does fluctuate. Production fluctuates throughout the year, so you may get a bad month, you may get a good month, but I think it's
sure,
given where the price is, given the macro backdrop, I think this could be a very interesting inflection point for the company in terms of its value.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, a bit of a different play there. Yeah, you were basically playing on palm oil and cashews.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Are they traded like coffee? Do you know? Is there a spot for cashews? I don't know. Probably not.
I believe there is. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a big market, isn't it? And also the fact that the business model is good too, because it's a collaborative process with the local community, and the Ivory Coast. It's made up of all these small, all of these smallholders that basically harvest their crop, take the crop in, get it processed, get paid for it, and it's a lovely model.
Well, thank you for bringing that back on the sort of radar, because I think you're right. It's a good one to keep. Now that those technicalities are out of the way, it sounds like the next few months are quite an important time to watch them and see those monthly updates and indeed the revenues coming in. So it's good to have it back on the radar, so to speak. Okay. Good.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Well, thank you guys. Thank you very much for that. That was a good little chat. So we're speaking a bit earlier next week, but looking forward to it. Hopefully next week brings a bit more interest into the May now, of course. The old a day to sell in May and stay away might start to apply. I don't know. But we can certainly still keep talking about different stocks as always, and picking the ones we feel that have got a bit of value to be had in them. There's a couple of Stockbox premieres coming up. We're going to finish the season, if you like, end of May, with a couple of those streams. We've got one focusing on gold. So gold, companies that are into gold. So we've got Miele lined up, we've got Bluebird Merchant Ventures, and hopefully Kuvango. And then we've got our last one in May to finish off, which is companies moving. Well, actually companies in revenue, so small caps in revenue. So we're including Kazira Global in there. We've got Nostra Terra, oil and gas, and Mendel. So those are the three that we've got coming up. So it should be a good one, that, because AIM companies that are making money. Really good.
There's, I don't know if you've seen the videos and the some of the images on social media from Kansas, but Nick's doing a good job over there. They've got that Broby salt well disposal well nearly up and running.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So excellent. Well, thank you guys. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll speak next week.
Cheers, Mark. All the best.
Thanks.
Cheers, Dan.
Cheers.
All the best.